You're listening to the Oklahoma Onstage podcast, where we sit down with people from the bustling theater scene in the great state of Oklahoma. We hope you enjoy your time with us. If you do, please share the podcast with those you know. If you'd like to know more about who we are and what we do, visit us on Facebook or Instagram, or go to our website, oklahomaonstage.org. Now hang on to your hat. We're starting another episode right now.
Welcome back, everybody, to Oklahoma On Stage. As always, I'm Tim. I'm your host. And today we're sitting down with a technical hero in theater here in Oklahoma City. I've been talking about it for a while. I'm loving that we're able to get more technical people, more behind-the-scenes people spotlighted on this show because, again, we are about all things theater. Most of the time when you walk into the theater, you never think about the person who decided what you see and how you see it. But today we're talking to one of those people quietly shaping the way Oklahoma City experiences live performance. He's a lighting designer, electrician, and all-around backstage problem solver. He's worked with Lyric Theater of Oklahoma, designed automations for their decade-long run of A Christmas Carol, lights shows for Lyrics Academy, and has been stepping into the world of Broadway tours and major productions with the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees Local 112, as well as Southern Plains Productions and OKC Rep. He's part artist, part engineer, part firefighter. If you've ever wondered who actually paints the light, moves the scenery, and makes the magic that so captivates us all, then this is your episode. Oklahoma On Stage family, please join me in welcoming Augustus Mathews to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I don't know how I can live up to that intro. Oh my goodness.
Everybody kind of seems to have the same impression when that happens. So, but it's all good. That's just the beginning. You're going to tell the story. So,
Glad to be here.
As we get started, same place that we start with everybody. We start at the very beginning. When did you get started in theater?
So I grew up, as many people did, in a church living in Oklahoma. And so I used to do, church plays growing up, and then did a couple plays in elementary school, but in middle school decided theater was not my thing. I thought that theater people were kind of weird.
As we are.
As I've gotten into the field, I found out, yeah, I was right. And I am unfortunately one of them. In college, I actually started with a biology major. My goal was to eventually become a cardiovascular surgeon, and I was not having fun. And one of the upperclassmen in my program actually pulled me aside, and it took me years to realize that she was kind of being rude. But she pulled me aside and she was like, "So what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I'm here at Oklahoma Baptist University. My mom went here, my grandpa went here." She's like, No, not the college. In this program. What are you doing here? You don't really seem like the other pre-med students. The theater's having open auditions. I think you fit in great with those people. And, I was kind of frustrated with where I was in life. And so I went for open auditions. I got a role in a play. I loved it. I even went back to her and I was like, "Hey, thank you for saying that. That meant so much to me." And I remember her looking at me strangely. And it took until I was telling that story to another friend years after the fact. And they're like, "Dude, she was bullying." Completely flew over my head, but never been more grateful for someone to be rude to me, because that has been one of the best choices I've made, was changing into theater.
So it was in college that you first discovered theater. And now again was at Oklahoma Baptist University in Shawnee. Know it well. Right around the corner from my house.
Yeah.
So when did you decide that backstage was more your thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I started, as I said, with a role in a play. It was a play written by one of my friends, Garrett Wheeler, who now works at Shawnee Little Theater. And then I continued my sophomore year. I was the Pirate King in Pirates and Penzance. I also played Austin Dickinson, Emily Dickinson's brother, and Emily and Anethus Remembered, written by Chris Craig and Day. And it was around then whenever I realized that I'm really loving the stage, but these lights are doing some really cool things. And then that semester was whenever COVID hit. And as we all know, the entire industry kind of screeched to a halt. And I watched a lot of actors online lose work and have to pivot to other things. I saw a lot of technicians be able to move laterally into other fields for a time and then hop right back in after the pandemic ended. And I really liked that stability. Theater is famously not the most stable industry.
Really?
And I know this is news to the podcast, but I saw that and I really liked it. And again, I saw what the lights were doing. I thought that was a really cool field. And I've yet to be proven wrong. It's fantastic.
Very cool. So you graduated OBU in 2022?
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, right in the midst of COVID. So you graduated. What did you do with your degree?
So I applied to a few different theaters, but my main two that I was hoping for were Lyric Theater and Sight and Sound Theater out in Branson. And they both got back to me, both offered me a position, but I'm from Oklahoma City. I've grown up in the area, and I really liked the season that they had. They had Matilda, Carousel, and Kinky Boots. Kinky Boots was one of the first musicals that my wife and I ever listened to together. She was another reason I got to theater. Right around the time of that play that I did freshman year, I started dating this girl who was really into theater. She has now become my wife. She's wonderful. Her name is Tori. And she had gotten me into Kinky Boots, Shrek, and Mean Girls were the three musicals that we listened to first together. And so seeing Kinky Boots, it was a really special play that I wanted to have a part of. And so I started at Lyric Theater pretty much right after graduation. I had a week to move out of my college apartment and down to the city. And then I started just a week later, and I started working first at the Plaza Theater as we started loading things into the truck and then going over to the Civic Center, and the rest is history. I've been there ever since.
So you started there. Were you immediately doing lights?
Yeah, I started on the changeover electrician crew that summer. So there are, for summer stock theater, there's typically going to be two lighting positions, which are going to be changeover crew and show crew. Show crew are the people who are there during the run of the shows, running spotlight, running things backstage, running the light board, while changeover crew are the people who are working between the shows. All right, we've got 2 days. Let's tear this down, put up the next one. And that is where my heart is. My heart is more of the hands-on. I love show crew as well, but if I had to choose, changeover is where my heart is.
You got more of a construction side to it.
Yeah. I love the science of it. I love, I don't know, I just love the technical aspect of it, where occasionally you'll do this if things go wrong, but with changeover, you're constantly fixing lights, you're constantly addressing technical issues. By the time the show is there, ideally, if everything went well, knocking on wood, you're not going to have all those issues popping up, and the problem solving is what I really love.
Nice. And you always got to have those guys on hand, because it's live theater after all.
Exactly.
Anything can happen. So you bounce between lighting, scenic, carpentry, welding.
Yeah.
How do you describe to a normal person what you do?
That's actually a really good question. I'm currently considering making a video for that, because this past holidays, I've been working in theater for 4 years now. And this past Christmas, I was at home or at my parents' home, and my mom asked me, she was like, okay, so, my friends sometimes ask me what you do, and I always tell them that you work in theater, but that's kind of where my knowledge about it ends. What do you really do? And so I typically just say theatrical technician, but that always brings up, okay, so what do you do? Okay, well, I work in lights and sets. And then okay, so what does that mean? I'm like, okay, well, I hang the lights. I focus them, program them sometimes. I build the sets, and then I see people's eyes kind of start to glaze over. So I really want to maybe make a video that just kind of goes over everything and kind of both an overview and more detailed. And as you can see, I'm very verbose, so it's not very good for me to try and condense it into a few words, but the actual technician would probably be the neatest way to say that.
I like it. Great way to tie a bow onto it. But always feel free to elaborate if you need to. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
So, what's something about Lyric's process that surprised you when you first joined the team?
So coming from Oklahoma Baptist University, our theater major program was pretty small. My graduating class was 3 people. And of those 3 people, I'm the only one still doing theater. And the rest of the grades were about 3 to 5 people per grade. So we really only had less than 20 people. And so at OVU, when you were in technical theater, you were in all of technical theater. Even the actors had to help out with shop hours every week. And that was something that was really different coming to Lyric, where they had enough people to do everything. And so I would like kind of feel weird where I'm like, I'm only doing lights. So eventually I did start, whenever there wasn't lighting work to do, I was like, hey, can I just hop in on the scenery? And they're like, I guess. And then now that's what I do is anytime that we're not doing lighting, because lighting doesn't take as much time to set up. With scenic, you have to go from absolutely nothing to getting all the 2x4 cut, getting all the plywood to size, getting everything faced, getting everything over to paint department, getting everything back, put the trim back on, getting everything in the truck to bring it over to the theater. And lighting, it's more, all right, go to the closet and get the lights, hang them, it's done. Not to minimize what I or anyone else does, but scenery just takes a lot more time. And so there's typically more work to do for the scenic department as far as time goes. And so whenever I'm not doing lights, I hop into the set, into the scene shop.
Okay. And I've seen, you did work on the Christmas Carol there, and I did see that pretty much wraps around the whole audience. And so there's a lot to build there.
Those facades that are wrapping around the audience are actually new this year. They were in the original design, but that set is so massive that it took a while for us to actually get everything built.
Yeah.
It's a truly mammoth show.
And there's a lot of moving parts, and which, speaking of, you worked on some of the automations.
Yeah.
Was that the I guess the trolley system, fly system?
I do work on the fly system, but that's actually not automated. That is done live. So we have Josie, who is our shop manager. She is typically on a platform controlling the vertical height of the actors on the fly system, while myself and another technician, this past year it was Brian Sky, another wonderful person. I was controlling Scrooge, he was controlling Pass, and they felt like pirate ship wheels. And so that was us bringing them towards and away from us. And so we all were on comms with stage manager and Josie and each other, figuring out exactly, okay, bring them to position 5, bring them to position 4, all that. But the automation that I worked on, there is in the schoolroom scene, whenever Scrooge is going back in time, there is a window that opens and there's a clock on the inside. That window, figuring out a system to open that genuinely took me 2 to 3 weeks. And then the clock that is in the header above the stage, the hour hand can move backwards and forwards. It's got about 5 rotations that it can do. And so I devised a system where the light board would talk to a servo controller, and then the servo controller, I had welded some metal arms that can flex and bend. It's 2 steel bars with a bolt through it that is connected to, on one end of one of the arms, the servo, one end of the other arm, a couple of brackets on the window that can kind of push and pull it open. And then the clock, I attached a long metal rod to the top of one of the servos, and then I jerry-rigged this wooden block to sit on the back of it for the servo to sit on, and that's what moves the clock hand on the inside.
Wow.
I could go into that for hours.
Yeah. and you can hear the passion behind that you really love it. And they wrote really
whole documentation paperwork for it. Anyone wants to see it, it's on my website, www.caugustusm.com. Under the Burks tab, you can find all the documentation for that one. I truly am so proud of that project.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that website, that address is in the show notes so everybody can find it later on. So, this is kind of an interesting question, is with everything that we were just talking about. For people who don't speak tech, okay, what does an automation designer actually do?
That, and even if you just broaden that, is such a wonderful question, because I have noticed that sometimes whenever I'll talk to friends, I'm like, okay, I need to find a non-jargony way to say this. For specifically automation designer, what that process looked like for me was we had in the design that the window would open, and there was actually going to be 2 windows that opened. One of them we didn't end up building a system for it, but for the one that opened with a clock, the technical director at the time, Josiah Brooks, put me on that project. Initially, we tried a farm gate opener, and it had like an infrared clicker, but it just wasn't reliable. And so I pitched the idea, and this is where I became the automation designer instead of just working on it. I was like, do we have enough time for me to create a system? Because I think I'm going to be able to make a way where we can control this from the light board. We will have exact angles that we can enter, and we can have into the queue system. And they agreed to that. And so in a non-jargony way, what I did was I spent a lot of time researching how I used the farm gate opener as an inspiration and figured out how that worked as far as the physics goes. And I was like, how can I make that cheaply, but in a way that works reliably? And so I've spent a lot of time, genuinely probably about 2 days on forums online, looking at how other people have done movie parts, how other people have solved things, not even just in theatrical worlds, just how people have gotten things to move. And I ended up settling on a system that is used in haunted houses, where it is a servo controller that usually someone speaks into a mic and it moves a servo in a skull's head. And then I adapted that system to where it could receive signal from a light board that we had at the theater. And yeah, I'm realizing that we're about to slip back into jargon. So to bring it back, it is just a process of looking at what has worked for other people, seeing how you can adapt that to the problem that you're trying to solve, and then creating a system that will work every time, or at least should.
So to sum that all up, you make the magic happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's very good. I mean, it's interesting to see how that all comes together. So again, you can look on his website. You can see how all of that happens. So what's one moment in a show where you think, yeah, that's my fingerprint right there?
You sort of find that in every show that you do. Almost no project is going to be one person independently, because everything gets sent between departments. So like, whenever I built a portion of the house for Oklahoma, whenever Lyric curated Oklahoma last summer, we spent so long building this 2-story house, and that was not a one-person project, but you see what you did in that project. And so I built the porch, and it was a porch that could come apart for the truck and then come together whenever it was in the space. And then I created blocks so that the columns, which someone else made, could fit on, which then fit into the ceiling of the porch, which another person made. And then all of that went into paint, and so those were more fingerprints on it. And so there's never going to be a project where it's like, yeah, I did all of that. Even with the automation for the Christmas Carol set, I built the windows and I built the automation set, but that went over to paint, and so someone else painted that, and then they were into window frames that someone else built. And so the Christmas Carol set, the automation truly is my crowning jewel, but for every show, I have something that I'm like, yep, that's the one. For whenever we did Rocky Horror Show, my apologies. Whenever we did the Rocky Horror Show this past fall, which was our second time doing the Texas theme, which once again was a great hit, there was a string of lights that went across the back of the stage portal, which has the curtains that open and close that cover the band. And myself and one of my good friends, Jordan Evans, who I went to college with, we spent an afternoon and we drilled all those holes and we created the wires, custom fit to the piece, stapled it in. And so whenever that came on, I'd be like, that's what I did. And I'm sure to everyone else in the audience, no one's like, oh, wow, look at those light bulbs in the back of the stage. I bet someone worked so hard on that. I bet that person did that and that person. I know that that's not what everyone else was thinking. But for me, every night I saw that, I was like, and it's still working. I did good.
Yeah. And that's the thing is so many people, they look at this, everything works together and it looks amazing. They don't take the time to think one person did this piece to fit into the whole.
Exactly.
And so it's really very, as the old saying goes, very much like Tetris. everybody's a piece that fits in there, just right. And it's kind of your job to figure out where all those fit. So you are also doing work with Lyric Academy.
Mhm.
I understand you're doing the lights for Legally Blonde Junior.
Yeah, that is coming up first week of May, I believe, first or second week of May. I actually spent just this afternoon, they sent over a recording of a designer run, which I wasn't able to attend. Unfortunately, I had another event that I had to attend to. But so the process for that is that they sent over the run, and so I'm watching on one half of one of my monitors. I have the video on the other half of that monitor. I have the script following along with that. And on my other monitor, I'm creating a list of cues. So I'm pretty early in the design process for that right now. And so for anyone listening who's not backstage, a cue is essentially something that you put into the light board where Q2, the lights look like this, and then you can hit go, and then Q3, the lights look like this. And so that's what the stage manager will be telling the light board operator to do. So we're not changing every single light independently during the show. All of that happens beforehand and is saved into a show file, and the light board operator hits go, 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 and that's how that works. And so right now what I'm doing is creating a list of all the times that someone will say go. I'm creating when that happens, what measure of the song that happens, what word cues it, what it will look like. And then after that, I'm going to be meeting with the directors and other designers and stage managers later this week. And we're going to talk about our kind of cohesive vision for the show. And then from there, I'm going to decide exactly what everything will specifically look like and start programming all that.
Wow. That's quite a bit.
It's a lot of fun.
So what's your approach to a show that has so much color and energy?
Yeah. As far as design goes,
Yeah.
so it's not something that I, as the lighting designer, get to just independently pick. So there will be meetings, the production meetings, where the director will first kind of say, here's what my overarching theme for this show will be looking like. And then the designers, so you'll have the set designer and the props designer, the lighting designer, the sound designer, will all do their own research and will come back with, okay, here is some imagery. Like for lighting specifically, I will come back with imagery. Okay, here are things that like kind of evoke the idea of what I want the lighting to look like. Here is a specific scene, and here is all the imagery. So like, if it's like a forest scene, I might find, you can say forest scene, but there's so many forests. Is it like a magical forest? Is it a mystical forest? Is it a spooky forest? Is it a really happy cartoony forest? And so I'll find images that kind of evoke exactly what I want the audience to see. And I'll present that to the director, and the director will be like, I like that, or absolutely not, go back to the drawing board. Which has happened before. Whenever I was starting out in college, there were times whenever I'd come to the production meetings and I had completely missed the mark. I was starting out. Everyone has those days. And so I will go with those production images, and if they are approved, then that's where I start to figure out, okay, what kind of gobos do I like? And so gobos are metal discs that you slot into the lights that change the texture of the light. So it can change it to where it's looking like a stained glass window, or it can change it to look like leaves on the stage. There's any number of gobos that you can stick into lights, and you figure out, okay, what color? There are two main types of lights. There's conventionals and LEDs. So conventionals, those are ones with incandescent light bulbs. And you have the way that you change the color on those is with a gel, a sheet of plastic. I don't know why it's called a gel. That messed me up so much whenever I started, because I'm like, okay, a gel, like something kind of like squishy and liquidy. No, it's just a hard sheet of plastic. I don't know the etymology there. That's not my job. My job is to choose the color. And so you figure out what you want that to look like. You can also get scrollers, which have multiple sheets of plastic and can change the color in the moment. Or a lot of the industry has moved to LEDs, which you can change the color on the fly, no need for any sort of gels. Everyone has their kind of opinion on both. I like them both. I think they both have a place.
That's fair. So what would you say, how is designing for young performers different from designing for a bigger adult production?
That's a really good question. Trying to think of how to put this diplomatically. But for a children's theater, there's a lower expectation No one is going to their 8-year-old's performance and leaving mad that they didn't get a Broadway level lighting design. I love doing everything that I can for a children's theater, but the focus for children's theater is getting these children experience. It is making sure that they are getting all of their time in the spotlight, that they are seeing how the professional world works, and it is less about making everything look really cool and impressive and get everyone from the newspaper writing awesome reviews, and more about what can we give these kids to show them what the field is like without overblowing it, you know?
Okay. So, Legally Blonde, how much of your design is pink?
Oh, a significant portion. The side lights are pink throughout a significant portion, except for, of course, there is a scene in one of the earlier songs in which the frat house has a reggae themed spirit night of some kind. So of course the lights in that scene will change to more reds and yellows and greens to kind of evoke more of like the kind of Jamaican reggae sort of imagery. And then there's other scenes where, you know, obviously in the big musical numbers, you want things to be bright and pink and colorful and fun. But then in the scene where Elle gets broken up with at the beginning of the play, which kind of inspires her to even go to law school. And that scene, you know, you want it to be tighter and more intimate while they're at that restaurant.
Very cool. So, you've been branching out. Um, IATSE, as we talked about, the International Alliance for Technical or Theatrical Stage Employees, Southern Plains Productions, OKC Rep. So you started working with IATSE Local 112 last fall. What was that you started with?
So I started on the Broadway tour of Kimberly Akimbo. And whenever I tell friends, oh, I'm working on a Broadway tour, they're like, okay, so how long are you going to be gone? I'm not on the tour. Focus more on the Broadway part. The Broadway tour is coming through a venue. In this case, it is simply the Civic Center Music Hall, just down the street. And so they will show up with their trucks. And in that process, what that looks like is that everyone is broken up into their own departments. For Lyric, which is for Lyric, there's more allowance to go between departments, but within the union, they have more strict rules about if you are in this department, you work in this department, you are not working in another department because you are taking another person's job. There's a more, it is a union, and so it's more tightly strengthened.
Sure.
And so there will be people in the trucks whose whole job is to unload things, get things unstacked, and get everything to the department as quickly and efficiently as possible. And you have the lighting department, and then you have within the lighting department, you have the on stage and front of house people. So the front of house people are running things out to the balcony rails, which are the rails that are specifically in the areas in which the audience sits. And then you have the on stage people who are bringing in truss, which is a kind of system of metal railings that will have the lights pre-installed on there. So we're not hanging each individual light.
Okay.
We're hanging one truss that has a lot of lights on it.
Okay.
And then all the departments are working. It makes me think of like kind of like an ant colony where everyone is working in. Someone's really excited. Kind of reminds me of an ant colony in that everyone has their own part. Everyone is working for anywhere that you look while you're working on a union call. They're working really hard over there. They're working really hard over there. They're working hard. And the speed with which a union call is able to get things up is insane. We're able to get an entire Broadway tour up and running in 1 to 2 days because of how well the Broadway tour has prepared their equipment and how hard the people and the IA and the local 112 are working. It is a really impressive process.
So talk about the difference between working with a Broadway production and then just a show that's put on at the Civic Center. With the Broadway production, you're not having to really set anything. You just have to put everything to the point of their schematics.
Exactly. They come in and they've already communicated with the venue about where everything needs to go. They have an entire system and paperwork about how things need to get set up. And they come with their own department heads. And so they'll have a head of lighting, a head of scenery, a head of every department. And then they're able to take the teams that the local union gives them and break them up into, okay, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing that. And it is a really efficient process as opposed to Lyric, which is not inefficient, but Lyric, whenever I'm doing a show with Lyric, I'm starting from nothing and going to a finished show. Where with Broadway, I'm essentially handed a bunch of toys and told, here's where the toys go play with them.
Nice.
It's a really, really quick process.
So what would you say is the biggest difference or biggest challenge between working on a Broadway tour show versus working with a show that you've been working on from day one?
I think a big difference is what you were talking about with the fingerprints. Whenever you're starting a show from zero, you know how everything went together. You remember, okay, I hung that light. I adjusted the focus on that one. I created that practical. A practical being anything that lights up on stage that is like within the world. So like an actor turning on a lamp, that's a practical, and that's within both scenery, props, and lighting. Like I said, a lot of fingerprints on this. But with a show that you build from zero, okay, I'm the one who put the light bulbs in that lamp. I'm the one who did this. I'm the one who did that. With a Broadway tour, it is you are taking what someone else has done and you're just putting it in place. And I like both. I think there's a place for both within each of them. I don't feel as though, a Broadway tour, well, I didn't really do anything. I don't feel with Lyric, oh man, I had to do everything. Mm-hmm. I think that I get different enjoyment out of both of those.
Okay, very cool. So we talked about that, Southern Plains and OKC Ref. Mm-hmm. What have those experiences been for you?
So those were both at the Contemporary Arts Center, I believe is the name of that building. And it has a really fascinatingly designed theater. It's the Teatro Theater on the 3rd floor. And the person who designed it in an octagon shape. And so the grid also follows this kind of spiral pattern. It's unlike any grid I've ever been in before. And these are also smaller productions with smaller crews. With Southern Plains, we did Dead as a Dodo, which was this puppet show about this boy and this dodo who have both died. Really emotional story, really funny also. And the process for that was really interesting because that was my first time in that space. It was my first time with that company. I only knew one person or two people on the entire crew. And so I was just really kind of just thrown in and I was like, okay, I feel so out of my league here. I feel like a fish out of water kind of the whole time. But it was a really similarly fast process where all the design work and prep work was done before I got there. And it was more of put things in places. It wasn't as, there was still more technical work to do than there is in a Broadway theater. In a Broadway theater, all the cables are prepped in bundles, and so you just have to plug the bundles together. With this one, we still had to wire cable each individual light. But again, I wasn't there for the design process. I wasn't there for the prep work. I was just there for the hang, which is where we're specifically putting the lights, and the focus, where we turn on each light, make sure they're where they want to go. And then with OKC Rep, we recently just did Every Castle Ranked, which was a one-woman comedy show. It was spectacular. If you ever get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. And with that, it was more, so I work with a lighting designer, Sam Cox, on that show. I've worked with her with Southern Plains and Lyric Theater. And with her, she had done a lot of the prep work, but we were also figuring out how some of the pieces went together in the moment. And that was a really fun challenge. We also helped the set with hanging these curtains and had to figure out how to hang them where there's not hanging points. And so we settled on really good magnets.
Okay. I've heard of clips and clamps. Magnets is a first, but okay. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about between, acting and then technical side of things. So from this perspective, which grabs you more? Is it the design or is it the more hands-on putting it together?
That is such a difficult question. And I knew you were going to ask that. And I tried to come up with an answer on the way over. But the truth is I love every single aspect of technical theater. I love the design work because I love going from absolutely nothing. This play is just an idea. All we know about this play is the script and the fact that on this date we're putting it on. Figure it out. And getting to go from nothing to get to have a hand in, this is what the lights are going to look like. These are the colors we're choosing, the moods we're setting. This is how many cues we're doing. This is how many practicals we're putting onto the stage. I really like that aspect, because then you have one overarching fingerprint over the whole thing. But then with the technical aspect, I really like getting to have the fun memories of, oh man, do you guys remember whenever this broke and we all had to scramble to figure out how to fix it because we were, opening or starting tech week later that day? Anything like that where here's a problem, here's how you solve it. That process is always fun to me. And you get a bit of that in different ways within design. With design, the problem is, what is the show going to look like, and you get to solve it. With the actual installation, the problems are more specific, more, this light is not turning on, why? And so, I don't know, I really like both. If I absolutely had to make a choice and I could never do one for the rest of my life, I would go with the more prep work, the changeover sort of, all right, let's get it all in there, make sure everything works. I truly just have a huge heart for both.
Very cool. So looking at the philosophy of this, so getting a little more in the headspace of it, when you sit down to design a show, what's the first question you ask yourself?
First question I ask myself, to be cheeky, the first question I ask myself is, have I read this script before? But truly the first question is always going to be, what can I do that serves this play? And the question should never be, all right, what lighting can I do that looks cool? What am I going to give that people are going to leave the show and be like, oh man, whenever you had the lights do this, that was so cool. If I'm doing my job right, I'm not getting any praise at all, except for from other technicians. I know that I've done a good job whenever I ask a friend or a family member who's going to see the show and being like, what do you think of the lights? And they're like, oh yeah, they were good. Great, I did my job. If you are not leaving just either distracted by the lights or, man, the lights kept breaking and all this stuff, I've done a good job. It should never be about getting a spotlight on myself, because the spotlights are there for the actors. So the first question is always, what can I do that serves this play, that fits in the design idea from the director, and that also that we can do with the equipment that we have. Like I mentioned, at Lyric Theater, we have a lot of really good equipment. At Oklahoma Baptist University, where I went to college, we didn't. We had a very small stock of lighting equipment. And so I had to get really creative with what I could do with that. And honestly, that challenge was really fun to tackle, where, like I said, the question needs to be, what can I actually do? Because you can design anything, but without a lot of money, I can't do anything that I want. And so some of it is dreaming big and then figuring out, okay, how much of this dream can I actually accomplish?
Sure. So getting into the philosophy of it, thinking about what you're putting out there on stage, as you said, what can I do to help this show? How do you think about lighting emotionally and not just technically?
That's a really good question. A lot of the emotion comes from timing and from color and from intensity. And so from timing, if you move a cue too quickly, and so like, let's say that the light is kind of tightening in on this character, but it goes from wide to thin, or wide to focus really quick, the eyes of like, is that supposed to happen? And then with intensity, if a scene is supposed to be really emotional and heartbreaking, but then you have it really bright and everyone can see everything, it kind of takes away from the moment. Or the color, you have to pay attention to, how is this color going to look on the set? Because if you choose the wrong color and you're not paying attention to what's on the set or on the costumes or how it will play on the actors themselves, and if you don't do that, you don't want your people being like, huh, she looks green and this isn't wicked. She's not supposed to be green. But then at the same time, you still want to choose those colors because obviously with a lot of colors have a lot of emotional meaning, obvious ones, red for like passion and fury or blue for kind of moroseness or melancholy. And so you want to find that balance between setting the scene with the color, with the intensity, with the timing, while also not going too far and distracting the audience.
Very cool. Yeah, like you said, as long as they don't go out saying, "Man, what was going on with that?" Then yeah, I think the old saying goes for technical theater: if everything works great, everything's focused on the actors.
Exactly.
If something goes wrong, it's focused on me, and then there's a problem. So I like that. So, what do you think is one misconception that people have about tech theater, folks?
The amount of times, so like the within theater, my official title whenever I'm working on lights is electrician. The amount of times that I've made that mistake and people are like, "What do you do?" Well, I'm an electrician over at Lyric, and they think, "Oh, can you like put in an outlet over my house?" It's like outlets, yeah. Can I run cables within your walls? No, absolutely not. And a theatrical electrician and a traditional electrician are not the same thing. So that's a pretty big misconception. And the other one is whenever I tell people I work in theater, no matter how many times I tell them about that I work in theater or work in technical theater and that I love technical theater, I'll occasionally get questions like, yeah, but you really want to act, right? Like there's this misconception that technicians are people who wanted to act, couldn't quite hack it, and so they just kind of opt over to the other side. Not true at all. I tried acting. I had a lot of fun. I actually think I was pretty good at it. But it just wasn't what I wanted out of life. Once I saw what there was to do, in 2020 before COVID hit, I was at KCACTF. I don't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it's a convention for theater for all sorts of things. And I got to see a lot of great plays, but I also got to go to a lot of technical workshops. And ETC, which is the leading lighting technology company within theater and performances and concerts and pretty much anything live, I went to their booth and I saw the really incredible technology that they're making. An incredible technology that they continue to make. I like to keep up to date with what they're doing because they're constantly making new things that are just new toys to play with. They're really cool. And so there's not a sort of there's a misconception that technical theater is a backup plan or is somehow lesser. Technical theater and acting are on equal footing. Both have people that truly love what they do. Both of them couldn't exist without each other. Like acting, if I didn't have lights on, what are you looking at? It's such a dark stage. But at the same time, if there's no actors there, I'm just doing a really cool light show. Okay. Like we both have to have each other.
Sure. I like that. That's very good. So, what do you hope audiences feel when they sit under your work?
I think that theater generally is at its best whenever it is aiming for an emotion. In every scene, every play, I want the audience to leave having something to think about, something to feel. If anything from something as simple as sort of an escapist, oh man, that was fun, to something more thought-provoking where they leave like wanting to talk with their friends who saw the show. It's like, okay, well, what did you think about this? Well, I didn't agree with that. Oh, well, you didn't agree with that? Why? And then start sparking conversations. Whenever people leave a show that I worked on, I want them to be thinking about what the play was trying to say, what it was trying to make them feel, more than anything about what I was doing. Like I said, if they're leaving talking about the lights, I didn't do a good job. If they're leaving talking about what the play meant, I consider that a job well done.
Very good. So, looking ahead, okay, what's the dream project or dream company that you'd love to design for someday?
That's a good question. Design, I would say, isn't my primary end goal. My end goal would be to be a production electrician, or so a production electrician is someone who is at the top of the lighting department within a company. And so I'd love to be a resident production electrician at Lyric or at any other theater that has a position like that open. I know that professional theaters are, you know, few and far between in Oklahoma. There's only a handful of professional theaters, and a lot others are community or volunteer based. But my end goal would be to be a production electrician somewhere. To design, I guess whatever would have me, but truly uh, being a production electrician would be my end goal.
Do you see yourself being rooted in Oklahoma City, or are you open to?
I'm I'm open to the idea theoretically of anywhere, but realistically, Oklahoma is where I have a wonderful community, not just within work, although I do love the work community that I have here. I work with OKC Rep in Southern Plains in the Civic Center and Lyric Theater and all these theaters around town. And I love the work that I get to do here, but I also love the friends and family that I have here. My wife and I have created a really wonderful network of people uh, that we get to just live life with here in the city. And so realistically, I would love to stay within that community.
You see yourself getting back on stage?
Uh, Maybe one day. It would have to be the right role. There are a few roles where I'm like, if that's ever around town, I am trying out for that. One being Pirate King from Pirates of Penzance, just because I had such a fun time doing it in college. Another being Don Quixote in Man of La Mancha. I think that's a wonderful role. I don't think I quite fit quite yet, but I think with more experience and also being closer to that character's age, I think that would be a wonderful role to do. Um, I had a lot of fun at KCACTF, which I mentioned, watching Everybody by Brian David Jenkins, which is easily my favorite play of all time. I recently got to see Oklahoma State University's wonderful production of it. The lighting designer there, Fabian J. Garcia, he used to be the resident production electrician over at Lyric Theater. He's who I started with back in 2022. And getting to see his work and my favorite play at once was wonderful. I would play any role in that play, which is easy because the actors in the middle of the play get to draw from a hat and have a chance to play anyone in that specific performance. It's a wonderful concept.
Wow.
If you ever give a chance to see Everybody, I cannot recommend it enough. And it's one of those plays that, like I said, leaves you thinking. Whenever my wife and I got to see that together, because she's heard me talk about that show for 4 years now, and finally getting to see it in person was wonderful because we got to leave and I got to have that experience with my wife of both of us talking about, okay, well, what do you think about this scene? What do you think about the message of the play? Oh, well, I didn't like this. You didn't like that? Well, I like that. You didn't like that? I love this. Oh, I completely agree. And we would talk about both the design choices, because as a technical professional, I'm paying attention to this, but also just the message of the play. So I think if I could be anyone and everybody, that'd be wonderful.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Oklahoma State University is either doing it or has just recently done it. I've got a friend of mine that's actually directing that. So sounds really, really cool.
They just finished, that was, I believe, it was at the beginning of March.
Okay.
I believe is what I saw.
I knew it was on the calendar, and so I know they're doing Cinderella right now. So so 10 years from now, what does success look like for you?
Success for me, to be completely candid, would be a resident production electrician job somewhere. I love the freelance work that I get to do. But as we talked about earlier in the episode, theater is not a stable field. And as my wife and I look towards the future of what we're wanting out of life, stability would be really lovely. I mean, I know that there are some people who love the freelance kind of lifestyle, who love the freedom of getting to go from theater to theater, getting the chance to just kind of up and move and be like, hey, there's a great show happening a couple states away. I'm going to go hop out and go to Colorado and do that. And then I'll come back later, work this show. Maybe I'll go to New York after that. And I see people like that, and power to them. The industry needs people like that. And there are other people who want to go on tour. And I think that is a fascinating lifestyle, and you get to see so many places. You get to go on the road, be with these coworkers for a long time. But for me, what I'm wanting out of my career is a resident position somewhere in that stability.
I think we all want a bit of stability in our lives, So, as we do with all of our episodes, as we wind down our time together, we try to wrap things up with what we call our curtain call curveballs.
Mhm.
So it's kind of the ending bow to our time together, but they're fun, off the wall questions.
Okay.
May or may not have anything to do with theater. I have AI kind of spit these out, and I don't know. Sometimes I never know what the questions are until I put them down on paper. So it's a little bit of fun. So it's the first thing that pops into your head when we ask the question. So just let it fly. First question: if your personality were a kitchen appliance, which one are you?
Um, well, that's a good question. So I'm also working through my feelings on AI now, but I'll put those aside in just a second.
Of course.
But if I guess I would have to. Goodness gracious! Sorry, for some reason the only thing that's coming to mind is I have this electric uh electric potato masher that's soul shaped like Luke's lightsaber from Star Wars, and that is the only kitchen appliance that I can think of right now.
That's actually kind of me.
Yeah.
And it really kind of does fit with what you do. So I kind of like that. Okay, so you get a free billboard in downtown Oklahoma City for a month. What does it say?
I would have to go with something just completely vague and confusing that leaves people talking. And I would love to just never let anyone know it was me. And because the joy that I would get every time I just hear people talk about, just what what is even advertising? It doesn't have a website, it doesn't have a phone. What is that? I would just feel so fulfilled every time.
There you go. I love playing with people's hands. So
Absolutely.
you can have one completely useless superpower. What's your pick?
Completely useless is difficult. I frequently think about how often I often think about how wonderful it would be to have metal bending from Avatar, the Last Airbender series. Because of my job, I'd be able to just sit and just do all the lights from the floor.
Right?
Completely useless. I don't know. I'm a huge comic book fan, and so I've seen so many seemingly useless superpowers get turned into absolute powerhouses. So it's hard to think of one that I can't immediately be like, oh well, if you used it like this. So I don't know. I don't know if there can be any completely useless superpower.
Okay, that's fair. If your life had a default video game soundtrack looping quietly, what genre would it be?
Oh, I could easily go into a rant that I have about Spotify and how they loop all video game music under the same umbrella. Because there was one time I was listening to the soundtrack from Outer Wilds, which is this bluegrass soundtrack, and then the next thing it played was like, here's some more video game soundtrack music, and it was from Doom Eternal, which is heavy metal. Not the same genre, but because they're both from video games. But if I had to, I would have to go with the soundtrack from Outer Wilds because I truly do have that at the top of my Spotify Wrapped every single year because I constantly listen to that soundtrack throughout my life. It is calm, it's relaxing, it has this sort of sense of wonder and amazement at the unknown, with a sort of kind of ease of not knowing everything. It's truly wonderful soundtrack. I cannot recommend it enough.
Okay, I like that. So you can instantly download expert level knowledge on any topic not related to theater.
Okay.
What would it be?
I love to cook. It is one of my favorite things to do, both for my wife, for my friends. Whenever we go on vacations, I'll typically cook for everyone. But within the culinary field, I cannot bake. I have tried it multiple times. The only thing I've been able to do is make peanut butter cookies. Something about the precision, I just get a little overzealous, I guess, because with cooking a soup or something, you can put anything in a soup. It's easy. With like seasoning meats, it's really hard to do that wrong. Granted, I do say that with years of cooking experience, but like I find quite easy. I'm constantly shocked at the ways that some people are able to under and over season their food. But making. I just can't get it. And I would love to just one day pop out a wonderful cake with no warning for everyone. That'd be wonderful.
Okay. You're handed an empty room and told to turn it into your ideal recharge space. What's the first thing you put in it?
First thing I would have to put in it would be, oh, that's a really good question. Oddly specific, but a CRT TV, one of those old, TVs that were unfortunately outmoded by, flat screens, LEDs, and plasma TVs, which have also gone by the wayside. But I have so many fond memories of playing games and watching old movies on that old, like, fuzzy CRT TV. And I remember loving feeling the static after you turned it off, and you could kind of feel it as it like kind of died down. Uh, and just sort of the softness of it as the light bleeds from each area on the screen. I don't know, something about that, it just feels comfortable and cozy.
Yeah.
And I would love to have that in any sort of comfort.
I love it. That's how I grew up, so it was right there. So you must give a TED Talk tomorrow on something oddly specific.
Okay.
What's your topic?
Okay. That is a really good question. I have a few different ways I could go with that. I'm trying to think of something that's not so incredibly niche that no one but me will understand it.
Well, it's oddly specific. So,
one thing that I've ranted about so many times is, one of those things that will get passed around on social media every so often is like, is this a this? And so, like, you'll have, is a taco a sandwich, or is is XYZ sandwich?
is tomato or fruit?
Yeah, exactly. And like all these things. And there are so many random questions that have answers. And the whole reason that they go viral is just people just don't know the answers. So people are just arguing over things that have answers. And there are so many things. Like, for example, I would have to argue that, like, a hot dog is a sandwich fully and completely, because if a submarine sandwich is a sandwich, a hot dog is just a submarine sandwich, but the meat isn't chopped up. That's the only difference. And I'm really passionate about that one. And so I'd have to go on questions that have obvious answers that people just don't accept.
Okay. You get to rename one day of the week. What's the new name and what's its purpose?
So my wife and I have a sort of tradition where pretty regularly, so my wife, her name is Tori, and she's a nurse. She's a genuine healthcare hero, works so hard and is so exhausted all the time. And so frequently I'll put in our like Google Calendar, I'll be like, this is a Tori day. This is a Tori day where, like, that whole day, she and I are both off. And my whole goal that day is, I'm going to get you all the food you like. I'm going to put on all the shows you like. This whole day is for you. And I would love to just kind of canonize that into the calendar where every week my wife gets to do whatever she wants. That'd be wonderful.
Everybody needs a day of their own.
Exactly.
So, Augustus, we've reached the end of our time. I've had a lot of fun, and hey, I get just about everything you talked about. Maybe some people won't, but hey, that's what everything we say it all the time. And you talked about acting and technical theater. There's something in theater for everybody.
Exactly.
And even if you don't like being in the spotlight, there's some people that are very introverted and don't like that. Yeah. Man, the behind the scenes can be just as important and just as powerful for everybody. So thank you for helping shed some light on that. We appreciate it. And thank you for what you do for theater around Oklahoma City. We look forward to many more bright and wonderful looking shows around the metro. So for everybody else listening at home, thank you for your time. Thank you for giving just a little bit of your commute or your downtime or whatever it is. If you're listening in your office, home, or vehicle, we appreciate you giving that time to us and spending a little bit of time with us. We want you to continue to support us, or you can reach us on our website, oklahomaonstage.org. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We appreciate that. And, if nothing else, whatever you do, continue to support the arts.